Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host, companion, and brother for life, the second strand of rope, which I don't think makes us unbreakable, but it certainly makes us strong. Big round of applause for Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey, Dev. Man, we can't start doing the movie stuff yet. You outright told me that we need to fill a certain amount of
Well,
time
I mean, you
beforehand.
you say that, but I gotta tell you, this is a semi-time capsule episode because we're not
Absolutely.
recording on Christmas. This is being recorded on the 22nd of December, right? If you need to have that information, put it on the Wikipedia because I know there's someone out there making a Wikipedia. They just haven't published it yet because it's not yet ready. Direct
Devin's
quote.
just so sure, though. He's so sure.
Direct quote from the Gollum-esque fan that we have of the show. So what we are talking about, if you haven't gleaned it,
By the way, thank you.
oh yeah,
Gollum-esque fan.
yeah. I mean, thank you. I mean, I'll thank them when they put up the Wikipedia, and it's no longer just a dream in my heart and my
Here it
mind and
is.
my body and my
We're
soul.
rolling into 2023, and this is a preview, folks. Devin starts to take on the audience.
That's right. I'm punching you all. No, I just
I'm
came.
a stand-up comedian in the 2000s. Fuck y'all.
I just came from Walmart. 3 days before the big day. I'm rolling a lot of my R's tonight. I don't know why I'm doing that. So
I
here's
don't
the
either,
thing.
for no reason.
If you haven't gleaned it yet from the title of this episode, we are covering Three Ninjas as part of Ninj-ativity, which is when at Christmas time we cover a ninja movie from our youth. We started it with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, followed it up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze, and now this year, 30 years old, is Three Ninjas, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, there's a
However,
lot of stuff in that exact setup that you set up there. There's a lot of stuff we have to unpack. But
yeah.
sorry, there was a but at the end of that.
But, and the only thing that you heard, according to my father, is the fact that one of the weirdest things about Three Ninjas is that it was a international film. By all accounts, it was not made in America, but it's very strange. It was not made by an American company, but it was purchased for distribution in America. And when it came
Yeah.
time to distribute it in America, they decided there was 11 minutes of that movie that was just going to be cut for American audiences. So I've put
Which,
11.
like, is weird because if you watch the movie, you'd be forgiven for being like, what are you talking about? This is super American. But we'll get to, like, they did that. There was
Yeah.
some work done to this movie to make you feel that way.
Yes. So what we're going to do is I have the handy dandy microwave timer. 11 minutes are on that timer. And for the next 11 minutes from when I hit the start button, we're not going to talk about Three Ninjas, so that when we are eventually picked up for distribution in America, because here's a fun one. Neither one of us are in America right now for this recording. Hoink. But when we are picked up for distribution in America, I think by Disney, right? Disney is the one that we're shopping it around to.
I mean, even if we're not meaning to, eventually we'll be under the mouse umbrella. So, like, yeah, sure.
That's a very good point. So for the next 11 minutes, so they have something to cut from the film, well, the episode, we're going to talk about something that is not Three Ninjas. I've hit start on the timer. And this is unfair, what we're about to do. I understand that it's unfair what we're about to do, but this is supposed to be a Three Ninjas episode. But we didn't give you guys the payoff on who won the World Cup from our last episode. While we were recording, the final game of the World Cup was happening. And Sejan was so kind as to give semi-interested updates throughout the episode and the recording.
It matched my level of interest IRL. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's what I was trying to convey to the audience. But now that the game is over, the game is done, we would like to report that the winner of the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Argentina!
I'm confused.
Why?
Because didn't that game end in a tie?
That game did end in a tie. It went to penalty shots. Much like every Mighty Ducks movie that we've ever seen and we haven't yet covered, but stay tuned for 2024. No, I mean, the first Mighty Ducks doesn't end that way, but D2 ends with a shootout. I think D3 does too, because they're like, it's so compelling. It's not really compelling. It just
But
kind of
the overtime, but the overtime tied score game is a pretty big trope of American preteen sports comedy, right? Like, yeah.
I agree. Sudden Death is more interesting to me, though. Not the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, though that's a very good movie.
I don't know what to tell you, Dev, but I would consider those the same thing as I think most people.
What do you mean?
The OT like shootout / sudden death, like I would lump them into the same category.
They're in the same category, but I think a sudden death is more compelling because you have to be on your game. Death is
right there in the title.
Well, I mean, death is right there in the title. But if you guys falter for any reason, if like as a defenseman, defense is what I played in hockey. If I faltered for any second and that puck went in our net, I felt directly responsible. And there's no way to answer back or anything like that. But when you're in a penalty shootout like that, I mean, every team gets to take 5 shots. Now, if you miss the first 2 shots and the other team hit the first 2 shots and then they hit that third shot, you know, it's okay. We can tie it and then we'll just do more of this. Like, there is a definitive sudden death moment in those spectacles, but from the start and by their very design, you have the opportunity to like answer back. It's not like a sudden death where as soon as you score, the game is over and the winner is chosen.
So how does association football deal with this?
Association football does the classic 5 shots for each team, penalty kick rules, and whoever has more goals at the end of that is the winner. And Argentina scored 4 goals to France's 2. So Argentina is the winner of the World Cup. And that completes the soccer portion of the Say Report. Possibly forever. I don't know if we'll ever
unless we're here again in 4 more years, which is no guarantee.
There's no guarantee of that. And also, I mean, I don't know if we're going to cover the big green, but if we do cover the big green, I guess we'll talk about soccer then as well. But will we?
Probably we'll talk about soccer as much as that movie talks about soccer.
Right, which is less than we talked about it right here. So if you're a football fan, because you really should be calling it football, buddy, this is where you are. So congratulations. But I'd like to at this moment shift the tide to talk about American football, hereafter referred to just as football, because something motherfucking weird just happened to Seijin. I'm talking Kennedy assassination level of weird. And that is, right now, as we're recording on December 22nd, 2022, we are 1 day away from the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. If you're not familiar with the Immaculate Reception, literally pause the podcast right now, type it into YouTube, and watch it. Because you need to see that footage in order to truly understand why it's as, like, bone-chilling as it is to me.
Yeah, also, this is going to sound like a very much kids these days thing, but it's not that. It's just the way the world is just not like it was when we were kids. But, like, by the very nature of not just watching a bunch of TV that you don't necessarily have a say in what's on, you probably, if you were born after, say, 2000 or even after 95, and then your memories kicked in by 2000, like, you might not have actually seen this thing anywhere. I remember when I was a kid, every sports show wrap up talked about this was always a highlight. And I mean, like, let's be honest, this is like the highlight of NFL history. This is
the greatest play in all of sports, as far as I'm concerned. And I know a lot about sports, and I've seen a lot of amazing things happen. The Immaculate Reception, via its like miraculous, almost impossible nature, is one of those things that like lives on in the hearts and minds of everybody, not just sports fans. And I would like to, I don't know her name, but the term, according to Wikipedia, I went on a bit of a deep dive yesterday, and we'll talk about why in a second. Apparently the term was coined by a call into a sports radio show in Pittsburgh, and the woman just called it was some kind of immaculate reception, and they ran with that, and that's what it's gone through. We had a bit of an argument. Yeah, good for her, right?
It sounds like a very New England old woman thing to say, so I love it.
Right. Well, it's definitely a Catholic thing to say, which is sort of the same thing. But then you also have to consider it's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So like they're not necessarily known for that. And one of the other crazy things is a Hail Mary pass. That parlance was not really used in football until 1975, where the quarterback for the Cowboys, I really wish I could remember his name, it has gone out of my mind right now, said, "I just closed my eyes and said a Hail Mary as I tossed it." And that's I mean, the term goes back.
I gotta be honest, Dev. This is already some deep sports knowledge that we didn't need to like
Well,
throw our
there's
dick
a
on the
reason
table
why
about.
there's a
So
reason
I'm
why this
proud
is
of
the
us.
cut 11 minutes. Let's be honest, right? This is our Watergate tape. This is the reason why we'll eventually be impeached. Is this sports chat that we're doing right here? This is my Around the Horn audition tape. So if you heard it, send it over to Tony Reale. I'm sure he'd friggin' love that. Anywho,
Who's got the chalkboard bit on that show? I always forget.
Woody Page. Woody Page, who has been there from the very first episode. They just celebrated their 20th anniversary Around the Horn. Fantastic hour-long celebration. But Woody was there on November 4th, 2000.
I am not eating wings in a BBW unless Woody Page is on screen with that chalkboard behind him, as far as I'm concerned.
When I lived on the Carnival Dream, I was able to still watch Around the Horn, and it just... People talk about it being their church and being like destination viewing. It's what tethered me to home in a lot of ways, being able to watch it. So Around the Horn and all that, that's not really what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the Immaculate Reception and the fact that the term Hail Mary has existed since the 1930s, but really it was used at Catholic universities like Notre Dame. Notre Dame was where that term was used a lot. And we got into a bit of an argument yesterday discussing the Immaculate Reception because I said it was a Hail Mary pass, and my father, like, vehemently, no, it was not. And I'm like, well, honestly, you look at what Terry Bradshaw did. He didn't really have a receiver down the line. He didn't want to get sacked. So he threw the ball.
He knew it was a bad throw.
Yeah.
He picked the accident, I think, is the better way of thinking about it, right? Is like they teach you this in driver's ed. If you're in a situation where it's either hit a guardrail or hit an old lady, you hit the guardrail, right? Because like you choose the accident, what's going to be the least amount of damage. And that's what he does in that moment, is he clearly needs to get rid of that ball, and he throws it to somebody that he probably understands is not in a great position to catch it. But to your father's credit, I think he's right, because there is somebody there. He is aiming. It is a clear planned version of the play that just doesn't pay off because of where the guards are and stuff.
Yes.
Right. And so that's not a Hail Mary pass.
No, I don't know. And going through it and learning all of the parlance and history of it, I agree as well. But it was an interesting thing. I always thought that it was part of it because of the whole Immaculate Reception thing. Not like completely writing off the fact that it happened on December 23rd, so 2 days to Christmas. And then to find out that like it wasn't like the sports media Illuminati who came up with the term, but rather it was just some call-in fan that just makes it so wonderful. Now for the sad part.
You just kind of bowled over. Well, you bowled over one of the important parts of that is that it happened on December 23rd, folks. So we are recording the day before the anniversary, the 50th anniversary. Right.
The 50th anniversary that the NFL was totally gearing up to celebrate. The Steelers were going to play the same team. I hate that all of this information has gone out of my head because I'm so excited to talk about it. And I've like buried it under the fact that like it was just a random call-in lady. But they were set to recreate the game kind of. And the man who ended up, you've seen it. Hopefully you've seen it before you've listened to us talk about it. What happens is Terry Bradshaw throws the football. The receiver does not catch it. He kind of like bounces it back, sort of like a set in volleyball, and then it is caught by fullback Franco Harris, who runs it in for a touchdown. Now that is not on video, and so this is a highly controversial play, despite being the like most notable play in the NFL history. And here's where it gets sad. Here's where the sad music kicks in if this were a Ken Burns documentary. Yesterday, December 21st, 2022, Franco Harris passed away. He was all geared up. He had done an interview with Nate Burleson of the CBS Morning Show that was set to air on Sunday. On freaking Christmas, they were going to show it because it's that iconic and that meaningful. It was going to air there, and it was going to air as part of the whole NFL celebration of this moment that was supposed to be recreated tomorrow. But now that he has passed away, I mean, they're dedicating it to him. They're still going to retire his number because they had planned to retire his number. It was going to be the first Steeler on the offense whose number was ever retired. I mean, the Steelers only have two retired numbers. Like, it's going to be the third number, but the Steelers are known for their defense, right? Okay, there's time. We're going to finish this one, though. Buena Vista, Touchstone Pictures, they'll just be happy to have more to cut out, is all I'm figuring, right? Oh.
Give the vultures more to eat.
Food, glorious food. Leaning into a little bit more of the Sarah Report stuff. So Franco Harris, he passes away, and it's sad. It's overnight. It's in his sleep. By all accounts, it doesn't seem like there was any sort of like foul play or anything involved in that. And it's just, so already you're talking about this guy, and then like the Bader Meinhof of the fact that the guy who was involved in it passes away. Like, it's just insanity. And this is a moment that kicked off the Steelers to become the dynasty team that they were. Because of the Immaculate Reception, they go to the Super Bowl that year, they win the Super Bowl that year, and then they continue to win Super Bowls, snowballing off of that miraculous moment. Now, here's the part that's a little bit more say-reporty, and a little bit more, I'm glad this is going to be on the cutting room floor someday. It is a controversial play, Sejan. Like, without a doubt, the fact that there is no footage of it, people wonder if he actually caught it or if he just scooped it up off of the ground. There's a lot of talk about that. And if you're the type of person who's been living with the truth for 50 years, he might have said to somebody, I'm going to come out and I'm going to tell people what really happened. But we have to protect the lie.
All right. Yeah, and here it is. I'm so happy that timer went off because I get to say flamingo and we get to move on. No, look, it is a noticeable moment when you're watching the only real footage of the moment, which, as you said, does not actually include the catch because, as far as the cameraman's concerned, as far as the commentators are concerned, the play is over. The ball is thrown. Bradshaw throws the ball, is not caught. It bounces off of some guy's back or helmet or something to that effect, and it's assumed to be a dead ball. So they are mid-sentence moving on to the next play when they realize that Harris, that's how you say his last name? Or is it just Harris?
No, Franco Harris.
Harris.
Franco was his first
so
name.
Harris
catches
Harris just all of a sudden runs into shot with ball in hand and people chasing him. So that's where I think it kind of falls apart, is that he clearly has the ball. He's clearly completing a play, and to my knowledge, there was no in the moment like retaliation of like, no, that didn't happen. Like, right? Like, right. And part of that is like, well, back then that didn't happen so much because replays were not so much a thing.
There was no instant replay. Like, what happened on the field, what happened on the field.
Right. So, like, part of it could be argued that, like, it was a time of, like, you know, sometimes you just don't argue that shit. But, like, that just seems ridiculous to me. It's such a huge play that if there was any cracks in it, right, you feel like then and there that's where the first evidence would be. And that's just not the case. So, like, it is a phenomenal play that could only happen once in a lifetime. And it has only happened once in a lifetime. You know, like,
no tuck rule,
it is a huge part
no
of
catch off the head. Because those are against the Patriots. I'm only kidding. Those are not even in the same planet. They're not in the same. They're not in the same universe as the Immaculate Reception.
No, it's too big of a play for me to ever get on board with the idea that it's all just a conspiracy, because you would have to include just thousands of people that very day that saw it and didn't say shit about it.
Yeah, but also you have to imagine it's in Heinz Stadium. Right? Which I don't know if it was Heinz Stadium at the time. It is in the Steelers' home stadium, right? So anybody who'd be like, that was a dead ball, you would just be
stabbed
instantly. You'd probably be stabbed instantly, right? Pennsylvania sports fans don't fuck around. He said, having fucked around and found out with some Pennsylvania sports fans.
I mean, the Steelers are the ones that straight up have to have like a barbed wire fence to like bring the visiting team in because they had too many fans like attacking the other team, didn't they?
And the Eagles. It's both of them. It is both Pennsylvania teams. Also, fun little fact while we're talking about it, during wartime when there was not enough to field two teams, the Steelers and the Eagles did the fusion dance to become the Steelers. Or the Steagles. And that is my favorite bit of just like trivia about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles joining to become the Steagles.
Yeah, and then they did the Rose Bowl twist together. Shit.
Yeah, but it was one of those things. Yeah, I think it is one of those moments where, obviously, based on all that stuff, it's just fun to pretend that like it was this huge conspiracy theory, and Franco Harris was going to be like, "I have to tell the truth." Like it'd be,
right.
I have to tell the truth. I can't go to my grave with this lie on my heart.
But that's how this shit starts, right? With
No,
like
exactly
with like
how it
sports fans
starts.
and all
Yeah.
this stuff. And there is a certain level, right? There is a certain level of conspiracy that I think we've really lost over the last 15 years for good reason, because a lot of the conspiracy people that we have come to know and love in the news cycle have turned out to be nut jobs that need to be like stopped. But there's like a level of conspiracy theorist and conspiracy theory that when we were growing up was a much more tolerable, beloved like side character in our lives, right?
Right.
And so like the drunk guy at the bar who on like Christmas night after watching this huge thing about like, oh, you know, the Immaculate Reception, we love you, all this, then that guy just drunkenly is like, I bet it didn't even happen.
Dude.
Like that level of conspiracy is that's where this falls for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. My favorite part is that guy. It is 1973. He's drunk at the bar, and they're talking about the Immaculate Reception again. He's like, "I was there. That ball was dead on the field, and he just picked it up, and nobody said anything."
It touched his toes.
It's all lies. It's all built on lies. All right.
Laces up, Marino.
All right, Jerry. All right, Jerry. You need me to call you a cab? I'll walk home sober up. Thank you so much. Like it's that
I
level.
walk better when I'm drunk, you asshole.
I'm not driving. Not that we'd care in 1973. Because he's also a time traveler.
Okay.
No, it's and that's why he's drunk on Christmas, is because he's stuck in the past. It's notoriously
I like
difficult.
this. The time traveling drunk who just sits at sports bars and bitches about how he knows the truth.
He time traveled to watch the Immaculate Reception, and then his heart was broken when he noticed that it was out of play, that it should have been a dead ball. So then over the next year, he just became a souse, drowning his anger.
And that man was Al Gore.
Because he couldn't go back to the future with that knowledge, because he would ruin sports for everyone. So he had to remove himself from the timeline. This is the stuff we talk about in the cut footage. All right, so that's everything. I mean, rest in peace to Franco Harris. He is, by all accounts, he was always this great guy, super magnanimous. Everybody has the nicest things to say about him. It is a loss for all of sports that Franco Harris has passed away. And it is just a really, really weird coincidence that it happened 2 days before the world was about to celebrate him in the greatest way that a player can be celebrated.
And do yourselves a favor. The holidays are coming up. Whatever holiday you celebrate, there's going to be a moment where you are sitting on a couch staring at a TV, having to just watch something, because there's going to be a bunch of people around. It needs to be innocuous. It needs to not be offensive. And you know what we used to do back in the day? Sports highlights was no joke, or sports bloopers. But don't do sports bloopers, because you run the risk of seeing that one where that guy breaks his leg on the field, and you never want to watch that. No, but sports highlights. Watch any collection of them anywhere on YouTube. Go out and buy a VHS, whatever you got to do. I guarantee you the Immaculate Reception will be in there.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. Or just look up the Immaculate Reception. Usually I'd put on the TV Guide
60
channel.
Seconds, that's 60 seconds of TV. That doesn't really help you on Christmas Day. When you're
what you do is you turn on autoplay, you look up the Immaculate Reception. That's the kickoff. Pardon the pun, and it will probably go into other great moments in sports.
You watch an ad on YouTube that's twice as long as the video of the Immaculate Reception, and then you watch.
I mean, it's on a TV, right? So there's no ad blockers on TVs. It's a shame. All right, so this is all the footage that's going to be cut from this episode, and now we will begin the episode proper. See you on the other side. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
This is all so familiar, Devin.
Well, you know what? It's just like every summer when I and Sejan...
Wait, what? What? Wait, you said summer and you threw me off completely.
I really thought you would go, well, Sejan and I. like the opening
Oh
of the movie we're
no,
covering
I
this
actually
week.
thought you were throwing like an exquisite corpse like bit at me that we were just like going to
Oh,
continue a story, but
no,
I
I was
didn't.
referencing the beginning of the movie that we're talking about for this year's Ninja-ativity.
Okay, so I actually have a question about that, but which one of them is because this movie has a lot of this movie wants to be a lot of other movies together.
Yeah, no, it is. This is the Voltron of kids' movies in the 90s. And of
So
course,
have we
what we're
said what we're
talking
doing?
about, yeah, what we're talking about, what we're celebrating in our third year of Ninja-ativity is Three Ninjas from
It was
1992.
I mean, like we couldn't not, right? It's 30 years old. It's the third time we're doing it. There's three of them. Like it was too, it lined up too beautifully.
Also, Three Wise Men, Three Ninjas. I have to be honest with you. If I
Well,
could, I would get a little ceramic Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum, and Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar can fuck off down the track because they're the ones bringing gold, frankincense, and myrrh to my baby Jesus for
well, the crazier
Ninja-ativity.
thing is the way that this movie, and we'll talk about this with some other stuff that they do as well, but this is a great example, is that by having three main characters, they actually find themselves, I don't think this is purposeful, and maybe it is, we can talk about it. They stumble into a phenomenal trope of like ninja film in general, and that is the three ninjas, like the small, tight, connected team of three men that usually have a connection, whether it's that they were all raised together, they were all taught together, they were all, or they've all found themselves in the same, like, you know, involved in the same crime or something. But like the collection of three disparate, you know, different individuals having to team up together with their ninja power to take on an evil crime lord
I mean,
is not new to this movie.
it's all based on the romance of the Three Kingdoms too, because that's
Yeah.
three guys from three separate things saying we don't want this happening anymore, so we will
Right.
team up, a la Romeo and Juliet. I have a thesis that I'm working on that Romeo and Juliet is also based on romance of the Three Kingdoms, but Shakespeare's like, there's too many kingdoms. How about just two kingdoms?
Oh, you have a theory that that a Western artist in like the
Was inspired
1700s
by
was inspired, quote, was inspired by Eastern art in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you've ever like read Journey to the West, but I'm pretty sure that's Dragon Ball.
All right.
Like, don't quote me on that, but I'm
Look,
pretty
man,
sure.
we're being worse than nerds. We're being high horse nerds.
Yeah, we are
gotta
being high
stop
horse
that
nerds.
right now
I'm
because
very
we're about
sorry.
to talk about three ninjas.
We're about
and
to talk about Three Ninjas, and
we're about to talk about three ninjas, and we're about to talk about how much I fucking love three
dude,
ninjas.
I fucking love this movie. Okay, so I guess just a little bit of place setting. First of all, this is technically a time capsule episode. We're recording it on December 22nd, 2022. So if anything major happens between now and the 26th of December, I'm sorry it's not happening. But this has become the tradition at the Say Report where we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ninja films from our youth. We call it Ninja-ativity, and we started it off with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. We followed it up with Secret of the Ooze last year because it was only a year between those two movies. And then coming down the laneway, ready to fill the gap that was left between there not being a third Ninja Turtles movie, comes Gino De Laurentiis and Jon Turteltaub with a movie called Three Ninjas.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want to. Oh man, so there's a lot about what you just said, right? Like the idea being that these are not just ninja movies that like we fondly remember, but very specifically ninja movies that we fondly remember from when we were kids. Because like I was not allowed to see the violent ones yet. I did eventually, and I developed a great love for martial arts film. I don't want to like I like I'm at that point of the episode where I'm trying to figure out how to establish myself not as like an expert in any fashion, but just as somebody that just has taken in a lot of this shit,
Fanatic and
right?
enthusiast.
Yeah. Enthusiast is a good way of putting it, right? I love me a martial arts movie, and like I've seen so many that I've seen ones I can't even name, but I remember scenes in like that kind of shit. Like, and the thing about Three Ninjas that I really found myself enjoying watching it now at 35 that I obviously never would have had when I was 5 watching this movie is how much this movie finds itself stumbling into purposefully or not, like really good ninja movie style, like filmmaking. I
Yeah.
don't want to put quotes around it because like a movie is made, right? Like here in all of these films, these like and what happens in like the 60s and 70s is that ninja, as well as all sorts of martial arts films, kung fu too, like gets this as well. Like just a slew of just movies that are just being made. People are making literally like 3 movies a month, like that are the same movie, just like they just trade out like some story beats and then they can put that movie out, and you end up with a whole bunch of different movies. It's why you end up with like 7 or 8 movies in like a quote unquote series of films. One of my favorites is there's a 3 movie long series, I think, that's the Revenge of the Ninja series. And the second one filmed right here in Salt Lake on the high top buildings of. I actually get to go see it in theaters last year. Or it might have even been just earlier 2022, depending on when you're listening to this. But like I guess that doesn't change when
Depending
I
on
saw
you're
it.
listeing to it does not change when you saw the movie. I'm
But
gonna
that
give you
idea.
shit organically, Suchin.
But like so like it's 3 movies, right? And they're somewhat connected by this one main character. They introduce a son in the second, and that does show up in the third. Like, so there is a connection between them, but you don't have to have seen one to like jump in on 3 and just enjoy yourself, right? Like, and so there's loose connections made between these because they realize that like recurring characters in series sell, but really it's more just about like just kind of hitting these specific beats and throwing it out there. And what I'm describing is at the end of the day, exploitation film, right? Like it's that use of these like weird tropes that as an American audience, we just want to go and see these particular types of people behave in this way. So we are willing to shell out money, even if it's the same story we've seen a million times. And Three Ninjas, kind of that's something we should talk about. The pluralization of the title, but the ways in which they kind of find themselves kind of stumbling into some of those beats and some of those tropes is really interesting because it makes for, at the end of the day, an early 90s kind of like tribute to those like early ninja films. It becomes like really fun to watch this movie again at 35 and now having taken in a lot of other different types of movies in this genre, like getting to watch this movie and be like, oh man, this is like some early, kung fu Jackie Chan stuff, or this is some really early like canon film stuff going on here. Like there's a lot of really good stuff in this movie that I couldn't tell you if it's purposeful or not. It doesn't feel like it is, but I think part of it is that as much as I love this movie, I have to admit it's not extremely well made. So like I can't tell if things are intentional or not in some moments.
I really feel like they might be intentional. On this, like, not all of it. There are some moments that are intentionally just biting on Home Alone. And that's undeniable. There are undeniable moments that are like, oh, Home Alone made all of the money in the world last year. Let's try to make this year's Home Alone.
Well, the running theory to the point where I think it's even a trivia beat on IMDb. So like that's where like this is the way people talk about this movie. Not that I agree with this, but this is the way people talk about it. Is that that they saw the success of Home Alone, they saw the success of Ninja Turtles, and thought we could do something that is both. And that is how this movie kind of gets cooked at first, and then eventually some better spices are added to make it taste a little bit better.
I mean, the Boston Globe is the one that is attributed on the DVD and VHS box art as saying part Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, part Home Alone, like all fun or something like that.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it is
something to
one
that
of the
effect, right?
like a critic is quoted at the very top of the box, and that's what I always remember is the fact that like it's supposed to be this amalgam of those two things. And
so I am under. I want to take this second to take just a quick sidebar, like a quick stop at this rest stop that you pulled us up to. Early '90s film critics, lines like that. Very often it was kind of a half joke that was stuff just being fed to them by studios so that could be what's in the water. Kind of always believed that was really definitely part of the formula, right? Like it has to have been, or is that too conspiracy theory? Am I being too tinfoil hat right now?
Well, you're being too tinfoil hat right now because I can't parse it out. So what I want to just clarify before I answer you. Do you believe, you're asking me if I believe that the Boston Globe was fed that specific line because the studios were like, that's what this movie is. I'm not,
yes.
Okay, yeah. Yes and no, because I can also I mean I tried to find the article and I couldn't. I mean I could have if I paid for like a 60-year subscription to a $60 for the year subscription and could go back and read the August, I think it's like 17th issue of the Boston Globe where this was actually in. And I'm like, I like the Say Report. I love the Say Report. Let's be fucking honest. I love this show, but it like at Christmas time, that was a little bit more money than I was willing to spend. When I'm already like kind of tapped out bank account wise. So I wasn't able to read it. But
I love you guys, but if you notice, we don't make any money off of this show. Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Like,
so.
I mean, I'd love to do something like that, but what are you going to do? So situation, if you're looking for a gift from me this holiday season, at Devin D. Decker
incorporate
on Twitter.
the show so that we can do a tax write-off on all this shit.
Oh yeah, my God, that'd be great. Yeah, is there a tax lawyer listening? Let's work this stuff out. But seriously, in the 90s specifically, that is what, I mean, first of all, that was kind of the movies that we were getting. A lot of movies in the 90s were like, well, this worked and this worked. What if we put them together? Will that work?
Well, I mean, like, we talk about tropey movies sometimes, and like we talk about the 90s being the time.
Fields of tropes, man.
The ways in which trope films came out, like, all they wanted to do was give you a big guy of some stature that then was paired with a kid, right? Like, and they're like, let's put 10 of those movies out.
Cop and a half, Kindergarten Cop.
yeah. Mr. Nanny, right? Like you just get handed those movies. We want to see a famous black comedian of some kind deal with a bunch of white people, and you just end up with those kinds of movies, right? Like we want to take, we just want to kind of take these ideas that we know are selling, and we're just going to do a shotgun blast of these types of movies for the next 2 years. And once it starts to peter out, we'll move on to the next thing.
We'll move on to the next thing that was popular.
Yeah, that is definitely the case as well. There are times when you read these critiques, and I will say they are often the ones that end up on the box are the first ones that I think of when I say this. Is it feels like this was a critical review compromised because they were asked to or felt the need to basically say exactly what the studio wanted them to say. And I feel like we don't get that so much anymore because there's so much more open communication between the studios that are making these films and the audience already. By the mere fact that we're seeing things earlier, we're talking to different people at different levels, we're seeing things on social media, all of that stuff, they don't need that anymore. So we've kind of lost that aspect. You still get it sometimes from guys like Rolling Stones, Peter Travers at Rolling Stones, who I adore the hell out of that guy and will read reviews when he writes them, but there is never I never give them a grain of salt. There's always this moment in every single one of his reviews where I'm just like, this feels like the pitch for the movie and not you reviewing the movie, right? Like that being said,
but that could be his journalistic style.
Like,
that's the weird thing about it, because first of all, I just have to, because it's 2022 still. Stephen King lost his mind on Twitter Black Friday of 2022 trying to remember the name of the fake reviewer who was completely manifested by Sony Pictures to put their message out there. And people were like, kept giving him solutions. He's like, that's not the one that I'm thinking of. But there were so many examples from the 90s of fictional reviewers that were just the studio. So there's definitely a level of truth to what you're saying, but it also comes down to, I mean, I really look at it as a chicken and an egg, because in the 90s, what movie reviewers were doing, like even Siskel and Ebert, right, to hold them up high as like the movie reviewers of the 90s, because they were on TV nationally. Everybody got to see what those two thought about movies, right? And that persists after Roger Ebert's death. There's still a website with his name that is putting up movie reviews. And I would love to believe that he is submitting them from heaven or hell, whichever.
They accurately attribute him to writers.
I would love to believe that, but I know that it's not. I know that it's other writers because they are accurately contributed. But
now, whether or not they're sitting there talking into a crystal ball.
They got a Ouija board. And it's really great because they've put a little sensor on the lens, so whenever it stops, it types it out It's crazy. No, I don't believe that happens. But also, if you're the studio, right? And somebody writes in their review that it's, imagine if Home Alone and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a baby, that's three ninjas, they would be like, this guy fucking gets what we were trying to do. That's the quote that we're going to use.
Yeah.
So it because of how early it is in the cycle, and because of the fact that all of that information from Stephen King's Meltdown on Black Friday 2022 attributed it to later in the 90s, I believe that it was an organic thing that happened in the 90s, and then they realized, oh, if we can control this, though, we'd be in control of this.
Right. Like, if this is going to happen, we should make sure this happens every time, is more like it, right? Like, it's just a curious thing, because like the good reviews of the time about this movie, just to get into some like solid facts about what happened with this film, like the good reviews of the time of this movie, at best, that's what they're saying, is that this is a film that trades on a lot of stuff your kids already love, and as it is clearly a movie for those kids, go and have yourself a good time. Otherwise, every other review is just like, fucking no. Like, there's just so much vitriol against this kind of movie in general, that this movie doesn't get a fair review anywhere, because it's either beloved to the point where you start questioning whether or not this reviewer even saw the movie in some cases, or it is shit on so hard because of the type of movie it is that you have to question, was this person even aware of the movie they were watching, or was they just like red with anger the entire time? Because it is goofy as hell. Like, and it's not helped by a lot of the weird shit that I kind of hinted at earlier, where like this movie is made not in America, right? But it gets picked up by an American distributor. It gets picked up by Buena Vista.
Touchstone, of all Touchstone Pictures.
Touchstone. Yeah.
I mean, which then goes on to be known as Buena Vista later, but it's all fucking Walt
Disney
at the time.
Right. All subsidiaries of Disney, as again, not the first time we've talked about them, and this is them. But
at this point, we might be a subsidiary of Disney. It depends on how this episode started for you.
It depends on the day. So all of this happens. They come in and they also make a whole bunch of changes to this movie.
They infantilize the film a lot. Like, that's the crazy thing. Like, here's the moment where I need to stop and say, if you are listening to this on December 26th, 2022, because I can't imagine that that's when this is posted. So I don't know, with Jeff Bezos, the way that he listens to the show, he's not going to go and change the website until after we've released the episode. So like, get out there, find it, rent this on Amazon if you haven't seen this film before, or even if you own a DVD or VHS of this film, go rent what is available on Amazon. And this is not me like shilling for Amazon. The reason why I say that is, the version that's on Amazon right now is the full, for all intents and purposes, uncut version of Three Ninjas.
What's the full time length on that one?
1 hour and 35 minutes.
Okay, so I will say, I think that might be the version then that I watched on YouTube, because let me double check now, because I can pull it on up.
The version on YouTube that I sent to you is 1 hour and 24 minutes.
Let me double check which one I watched, because if that's the case, then I watched the edited one. I just want to know before we get too deep into this.
I want to know that too, because it's going to be like us discussing two separate things. It's going to be real Rashomon storytelling to just lean into Ninj-ativity of it all.
Nope. 1 hour and 24 minutes. You were right. Yeah. So I watched the quote unquote full movie, although it was missing a whole 11 minutes of the movie.
It was missing 11 minutes of footage. And can I tell you the biggest thing about this whole thing? In the version of Three Ninjas that you watched, did they win the basketball game?
I don't even fucking remember. I remember her being like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Stop showing off." And he's like, "I'm not showing off. I'm just playing basketball." And then like, they're oddly good at basketball. I don't know what that has to do with ninja skill. But that's about it that I remember.
Okay. At the end of the movie, does it end on the docks, or is there a scene after the docks?
No, it ends on the docks.
Okay, yeah. So here is like a major difference between the two versions of this film. And Sejin is in edited land, and I am in uncut, still rated. It's not an unrated version. It was released internationally, and if you saw it in the UK, even more was cut out because of the laws against nunchucks or
the stars,
sticks.
right?
Yeah, shuriken. So all that stuff
shuriken
has
were
to get
also
cut
too.
out of it. So all sorts of things are happening there, right? And I'm also surprised the movie wasn't just called Three Heroes. That's a reference to the Ninja Turtles, if you're out there and you get it. But in the original version of this film, they lose that basketball game. And the weirdest fucking part about them losing that basketball game, first of all, we're going out of order, and I promise that we will go back in order. But one of the early lessons in this movie for the Three Ninja is a ninja should not be overconfident. Because Colt, the Raphael of the team, is like, the problem, his grandfather, played by Victor Wong, goes, never use your powers on anyone weaker than you. And Colt's response is, that's the problem though, Gramps. I'm stronger and faster than everybody. To which his grandfather grabs his friggin' nose and he's like, really? You're stronger and faster than me? I can murder you right now.
Yeah, right.
And it's like that. And it is a lesson that he learns that.
They definitely win the basketball game. Sorry.
Yeah,
I had to double check. They win the basketball game in the version I watched.
The fact that there is no scene after the docks tells me that. Because, oh my God, this is the craziest thing. I was not expecting this level of insanity when it was like, hey, let's watch Three Ninjas, right? So
like your impression of me.
That was my impression of me. I'm sorry. I guess I do look at myself and sort of see you, Sejin, but with hair. See, I can be an asshole too. But he teaches that lesson to Colt, right? Colt is taught that lesson. And then Grandpa goes out and is attacked by ninjas, and his three grandsons get involved in the fight. And afterwards, he's like, who told you to help me? And Colt looks him dead in the eyes and goes, a ninja shouldn't be overconfident, Grandpa. And like Jeffrey, because that's Colt's original name, that's his family name, not his ninja name, he has internalized the lesson of don't be too confident almost immediately, because he was super confident. His grandfather dressed him down, and then like he has internalized it. So then we get to the basketball game. And the whole reason behind the basketball game in Three Ninjas is there is a group of bullies who are just like super 90s bullies. Like 90s styles bullies were definitely a mood. And
to the point where one of the actors playing the bullies has about a string of a dozen movies in which he just plays like young tough or bully, or like that is the role that dude plays for just a decade, is just bully in 90s movie.
Yeah, like it's a real thing. And they steal Rocky's crush Emily's bike. And then when they like challenge them to a basketball game, and on the line are Colt and Rocky's bikes. And, you know, because we're not supposed to gamble. Oh, you're not supposed to gamble. Like, it's this whole thing. The weirdest thing about it, I need to say it now because it's all that's jumping to the front of my head. Why does the lead tough, played by Jackson, is it Babu Jackson? I think that's the name of the actor. He's a young African-American actor. And he's like the leader of this gang. Baja Jackson. Thank you. He is wearing a POW MIA hat, and like that makes me ask so many questions about what his home life is like.
Yeah, you get real deep into like, holy shit, did he like lose his dad in the war, and like this is his way of lashing out? Like it's a weird thing to be doing as a costumer.
It's a weird bit of mise en scène that they put on this character. It's like I almost feel bad for him because like the Gulf War, what happened to this poor bully?
I mean, it points to a larger issue with this particular movie, and some of it is because again of the genre of film that they're making. But I don't want to give them that excuse, right? Because this does end up being made, but with the director Jon Turteltaub that's like leading the charge, who isn't like huge at the time, but the man clearly knows how to make a movie. We know years later,
he made
right?
2 movies beforehand, and this is the direct reason why he gets cool runnings.
There's no effort put in to designing the world of this movie.
Yes.
Just plain and simple. Sets, costumes, all of this stuff. The only time that they care about what a person is wearing is when fucking the Doug Benson knockoff that plays the head of the stoner henchman in this movie,
Patrick
like when
Lebatorno, who you might remember from Jag. He's Bud from Jag. He's the only like big name person in this movie. He is the one that Amazon is selling the movie on his site. Like, oh, remember Patrick Lebatorno from Jag? He was an idiot surfer guy in Three Ninjas. Yeah, that was I was showing a scene to my parents about the difference.
That's the dude. He shows up eventually in like a Sharknado, doesn't he?
I believe he does. I don't know.
That's the only other thing I remember him from. I'm sure there's other stuff.
He was just recently in NCIS. I say recently, but like season 15, he reprised his role of Bud in an episode of NCIS.
Oh, that actually is amazing.
Yeah.
I loved Jack.
Jag is fantastic, and that's the reason why. I mean, you need to look at the NCIS thing. NCIS is a spinoff of Jag. Jag has been active since 1994.
I don't
in
want to
some
talk
way,
about
shape,
Jag.
or form. 94s are coming, right? 30 years from Jag is coming.
I want to talk about Jag today.
But it's weird. It's Patrick Lebatorno, and one of the other scenes, right? We'll get back to the basketball game because we have to finish up with the basketball game. But one of the other things that is just crazy between the edited and the unedited version is when the three surfer punks are robbing the store. In the unedited version, Fester, that's the name of the head of the group, shoots his gun 3 times to intimidate the clerk. And in the edited version, he pulls the gun and then his beeper goes off.
Yes.
But in the unedited, he goes, "Give me all the money, dude."
But the only moment that they care about any type of world building in this movie is when he eventually shows up as the pizza guy dressed in a Domino's outfit. And it has to be some type of marketing, right? Like the thing is like I say that and then I immediately think, but why the fuck would Domino's want that character to be in a Domino's outfit?
It's not Domino's that he's delivering. It honestly feels like, because we see the pizza guy, like that's what gives him the idea, and the pizza guy looks just like Mike Sisto's Pizza Man from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
the outfit is almost identical to what Mike Sisto was wearing in his human cameo in that film. So it's just like, I mean, I know you guys were like trying to make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You didn't need to make the pizza guy look exactly the same.
Well, but I think it's by the nature, though, that I do think it is a Domino's delivery guy uniform that we're talking about.
It's certainly inspired by it. Yeah.
Right. And And so that's the only time where they make any real effort. And I sat there being like, they only made effort because somebody paid them to at this point, right?
But I can't imagine that they did.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It feels very strange. I think it's one of those situations where like, oh, Domino's, if you want to, like he's already.
You gotta remember
there.
Though, the '80s and the early '90s, the running theory about the way the decades work, like everybody was still kind of high on cocaine, but they were just getting off of it in the early '90s. Like there is that idea that there's no such thing as bad publicity. So even paying to have your guy be the bad guy in a movie still meant you were on screen for 20 minutes. And I mean, like he's running around in that getup for 20 minutes of this movie. There's an entire third of this film. Yeah, there's an entire third of this film that is the Home Alone style knockoff, where it's just these 3 knuckleheads running around this house like the Wet Bandits.
Yeah, it's insane. But I think that like if it were Domino's, it would have been Domino's that he delivered, not generic pizza box.
Yeah, that's true. It didn't say Domino's on the box. That's true.
And it's like generic cup and everything like that. And it certainly doesn't look like Domino's. It looks sort of like every.
You know how we talked
place.
about moments, by the way,
just
because you mentioned the cup, so now I'm going to get into the bit about the cup. There are moments that of movies in our youth that are just burned into our conscious, our brain. And I think actually a couple of weeks ago we talked about this because of the ways in which I kind of just think about like laxative as like a trope in film and how it's always like an insta-poop and stuff like that. Like there's so much about the way that laxatives are treated in film that we forget that it's a legitimate medicine for like health reasons. This movie, I realized, is one of those core memories. That idea of him pouring the full-on bottle of laxative into 1 cup of soda and it turning it like that coffee creamy milk,
it's so gross
right
looking.
And then those guys drink it just willingly, just down it,
and they drink it because of the like, oh, he's playing with a toy that I want. Like it's just because Tum Tum's like, this is really good. And they're like, give me that. It's
Yeah,
not
okay.
soda.
I just like I had to tell yeah, that idea that like it is just this laxative bit in this
Yeah.
movie is probably one of those things that form that core memory for me about the trope of laxatives in films. Watching this movie again for recording today, I was just like, oh, that's where that comes from.
You want core memories, right? And it affects ninjativity, like right at its core. The scene where the guy is using the nunchucks and knocks out the two other
Guys
ninja.
behind him.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
like I always think that's going to happen in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles during the chuck off when like Michelangelo and the guy are doing it. Like, and that's not the thing. That's a scene from Three Ninjas. But I
Are you talking
always
about Secret of the Ooze with the sausages? Or are
no,
you
I'm talking about the first movie where where they recreate the Leonardo thing and then
Yeah,
going
yeah,
into
yeah.
10 where April's apartment is attacked and he's like, a fellow chucker. And they do the whole thing. And that ends with Michelangelo throwing his nunchucks and then kicking the guy in the stomach. But I
Yeah, right.
always think that in that moment, it's going to be him, the foot soldier, knocking out other foot soldiers because he's so into chucking. And that's not the case. It's from Three Ninjas. But because of this being such an iconic memory in my mind, I always supplanted into it. Back to the basketball game, which is where we need to like just talk about it. And we have to talk about the fact like a ninja is not overly confident. Rocky, who by all accounts is the Leonardo of this group, spots the bullies 9 points in a game to 10. That is so overconfident.
See, now here's the thing, though. Yes, it is extremely overconfident, all of that. In the version that I watched, they win. So it's not overconfident because it ends up working out for them, right?
Right. But it's one of those things, but it's still overconfident regardless. Like the fact that it works out, it's very interesting that it's Rocky who's the one who says it. It's because if it were Colt, then it would go against the character. I'm talking about good character design there.
At the end of the day, the thing you got to remember though is that moment, like you and I read that. So I'm sorry, I just had this realization that we're talking about Three Ninjas still, and it just hit me really hard.
I'm
that
about to
moment
use the
that you're
word
talking
hubris,
about,
so
that moment that you're talking about where he looks to his grandfather and goes, well, a ninja's not overconfident, to you was him internalizing the lesson and realizing it and then providing the help when needed and all of this really beautiful shit. To me, it was a 10-year-old boy being a fucking shithead to his grandfather who just said this one thing to him, and he realizes in that moment he can snap back with that and be funny. It's not that he's internalized the lesson. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think it's that he thinks the lesson is ridiculous, and this was him proving to his grandfather how ridiculous it is, because I think he agrees with what his grandfather did in that moment. Like, I think he agrees with the whole, like, going out to face the guy on his own and all of this shit. I think that's Colt just being a pain in the ass.
No.
I don't think that's him internalizing the lesson.
Completely him internalizing the lesson. Completely him internalizing the lesson.
He's just an ass from beginning to end, so I don't think he learns anything in this movie.
He learned so much in this movie. First of all, let's talk about which Three Ninja we identify with. It's Colt for me. I identify with Colt because he's angry. He's the middle child. He has so much resentment for their father, to the fact that, like, his mother being like, you're going to be a great ninja warrior someday. And then that being the callback at the end is her saying, I told you were going to be great at this someday. Like, he's the most complex character of the film. And I would make a really strong argument for him sort of being the main character of this three-hander that is Three Ninja, especially because he's the one who's like, well, this could be our chance to show Dad that what Grandpa is teaching us has value. He's the reason they don't call the cops. He's the reason that they fight the three surf punks. Because Rocky and Tum Tum are like, let's call the cops right now. And then Colt's like, or we could do this. And they're like, that's a good idea, Colt. Let's do it. But initially, Rocky, who is supposed to be the most rational, he's the Leonardo of the group, making Tum Tum the Michelangelo. And they're all smart. Like, there's no dumb Three Ninja. So they're all kind of Donatello.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with Tum Tum as a character. First of all, the entire idea that he is the quote unquote like fat kid of the group, and their way of showing this is not by actually having like an overweight child that is just really good at martial arts, but it's just that he's always eating something. But he is just as scrawny as the other two. It's just that he's got a higher metabolism than they do. And so that's what makes him Tum Tum. And then they like make fun of him consistently as if he is like overeating, but like clearly he's not, because he's not, he's performing just as well as them. He just needs more fuel than they do.
I mean, you also need to consider the fact that, like, the grossest thing that I might possibly say during this episode is the fact that Colt and Rocky are Irish twins. There is, like, less than, I think there's 11
Tum Tum is
months.
the younger, the very young.
Because Rocky is 12, Colt is 11, and Tum Tum is 8. So the fact that, like, the two older brothers who have, like, kind of a confrontational relationship, if Rocky didn't have the line, "my two younger brothers and I," then there's a moment where I'm like, who's the oldest brother here? It's clearly Rocky, because his name is Samuel, so he's a junior, because their dad is Sam Douglas, so he's Sam Douglas Jr., which is also the moment where I get to say, Tum Tum's name is Michael Douglas. Let's just let that sit for a second. All right, we all got a good laugh and chuckle out of it. But it's this really interesting thing, but it is Colt internalizing that lesson, because if you watch the scene again, and I mean, I've watched the movie. God, I've watched this movie so many times for podcasts. This was the film that inspired Three Friends in a Movie. I just need to admit that. Just like it's been something I've been dealing with and grappling with as we got ready to record this episode, is the fact that, like, my very first podcast, we decided to do it because, like, we're like the Three Ninjas. That was the thought process. Sorry, just to go down that road and just the memories. It's okay,
Colt. You can take your time.
Thank you. You're beautiful. You're just wonderful. But you know what? Just like as an aside from that, Tum Tum is played by actor Chad Power, and he is now a football coach, or he was a football coach in 2014, because we ended up communicating with him as part of Three Friends in a Movie. So, like, it was cool to, like, talk to Chad Power, Tum Tum from Three Ninjas and Three Ninjas Knuckle Up. But we'll cover what that whole thing means later on. But it's just this thing that I've been sitting with and dealing with. I don't even know where I was going with this and everything. He has internalized the lesson because his delivery is so, he's like hurt in that moment. He doesn't say it to hurt his grandfather. He says it to his grandfather in terms of, like, a ninja isn't overconfident. Like, if we hadn't stepped in, you might be dead right now.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those, like, it would make perfect sense. And if it were Raphael, he would have said it that way to hurt Splinter. Like, it would have been like this moment to lash out, like, we just helped you, and now this is how you treat us. Like, but it is one of those moments where Colt, and because it's his grandfather, and he loves his grandfather, and his grandfather is the only one who's giving him any sort of validation as an older male figure in his life, that, like, he looks at his grandfather, this lesson that he just learned, and he's like, a ninja isn't overconfident. And it's one of those situations where, like, Victor Wong, Mori Tanaka learns a lesson from his grandsons.
Yeah.
In the fact that, it's a beautiful moment.
It is a moment that is not given the weight it deserves in the larger scheme of things, I think, is the larger issue, right? Is that, like,
good argument.
My read on this movie comes from the fact that this scene shows up and then leaves pretty much like it's like an Irish goodbye. Like, it just shows up and it's just like, anyway, moving on, and it's like, oh, okay, bye, you're not here anymore, okay.
And that's by the nature of the movie, and the fact that they can't stay with their grandfather, they have to go back to the real world. So
this movie really wants to lean into this whole aspect that, like, they are leaving their life to come to this place. Honestly, it's a very Karate Kid in a lot of ways. In that,
well, you consider that the next movie they go to Japan, like, it's following the blueprint. The bad guy in this movie, Hugo Schneider, is so Terry Silver from Karate Kid Part 3. It's insane.
Yeah,
legitimately insane. He's so good. Rand Kingsley, like, just chews up the scenery in this film. I'll tear out your liver. Like, what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's got some very phenomenal moments in this movie where he gets to do some like crazy ass face acting that is really like fun as a villain, and he just embraces it. Like he
And I love this movie. It's just the end of it. Back to the basketball game, and just the craziest thing about the edited and the unedited version, right? So in the edited version, they score 9 points, right? Colt is the bully, like basically arm bars him and flips him onto the pavement. And in the unedited film, that shot misses. Baja Jackson picks it up, shoots it, and they win. They still score 9 points. It is still 9-9, but then at the end, they lose. And it's one of those situations where, like, well, now hopefully Rocky has learned the lesson of not being overconfident, because if you didn't spot the guy's 9 points, you would have had a chance to win this fight. But also, it teaches the boys humility. The crazy part about it is, you know, the edited version, the version that you watched, the version that we all watched until Wham Movies, and then Hulu decided, oh, we're gonna show the unedited version, and then for some reason Amazon went along with that. Do you know how the last point is scored? Do you remember what the last point is in the edited version of this film?
No.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Rocky dunks a basketball.
Oh, right, yeah.
From
There's
the
like a
free
slow motion
throw
shot.
line.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it is just one of those situations where, like, holy shit. And he dunks it, and they win 10-9. And the bullies are put in their place, and that's the end of the movie. In the original unedited version, Rocky still dunks the basketball, but it's for point number 6 of the 9 that they end up scoring. So it's just like, why the fuck did you do that, Rocky? Why did you dunk the basketball in the middle of the game?
Yeah, you seem to have blown your load, bud. You gave us your best shot in the middle of everything.
Like, well, I wrote it down, and there's the thing, like, I took notes because I'm watching it, and I wrote da-da-da-da-da-da, tick, 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 tick. Oh, I just said dick a bunch of times. Where is it? Come on, fill it up, Sejan.
Don't know what you're looking for, man.
I have it here, solar plexus. I won't eat dog poop. Oh,
yeah,
man.
but so like this movie really leans into a lot of really like tropey stuff at the time and tropey stuff within like ninja movies and all of that. And like the ways in which this movie is 3 different movies, because you have this whole opening bit, which is them with their grandfather learning this, and then the ninjas show up at their quote unquote, yeah, for all intents and purposes, I mean a dojo, right? Yeah. And they attack the dojo and they defend it. And then they go home and the first thing they do is get involved in a basketball game. And then they have to do this entire night of just, I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Home Alone is like
48. It's 48 hours. This film, from start to end, it's crazy.
So then the next day they have to perform all of this like Home Alone shit to protect their home. So like they had to defend it again, and then they have to they end up through a series of unfortunate events, end up being kidnapped, and they have to once again like face off against the ninja. There's just so many like weird, the beats of this movie are so obvious and so tropey, and then they win the fight at the end with the ninja, and grandpa actually comes in and does some pretty badass stuff at the end, and like movie over, right? And like the fact that I then went on to take this movie and watch it dozens of times, whether it was because it was on TV for like Saturday afternoon movies, or we rented it from like the Blockbuster or the pharmacy eras. Like Three Ninjas became this movie that we just always fell back on. I think we went to go like visit family once. Like we went like across the country to visit family, and there was going to be like a movie night where we were all going to just hang out and watch something. And I think that Zach and I picked Three Ninja for that too, right? Like Three Ninja becomes one of those movies that we just put on. So it's just always everywhere. Do you want to know the craziest thing about the Three Ninjas franchise? Because this spawns like 3 sequels.
3 sequels that are not Touchstone. They're all TriStar.
I don't know if I've ever seen any of them.
Oh my God.
I don't know if I've ever seen any of them.
Well, I am super happy for 1994, 2024, 2025, and 2028.
Now,
If the same
that's to
report still
say, we
exists.
could put them on and I could be like, oh, right, we did rent this once, but not like the first one.
The first
Like the
movie,
first one we just watched.
I owned the
always.
first movie. Three Ninjas was the sleepover movie because it
I
was
think I
not
own
a,
Three Ninjas as a movie, but I think as far as like a puzzle goes, I think we had one of those movie poster puzzles for Three Ninja Kick Back, which I think is the third one,
that's
right?
well, it's weird. It was the second one that was released, but it was the third one that was made. If you want to like
Okay.
get real crazy, because Knuckle Up, which is the third movie that was released in 1995, is the original three actors again, but like Kickback is the direct sequel. Like it's written as a direct. It's so crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I celebrate the first three movies. High Noon at Mega Mountain I've only seen like 2 times. And one of them was for Three Friends in a Movie. We watched it for Three Ninjas March back in 2015. Those episodes are all available, by the way. And I went back and I listened to the Three Ninjas episode just a little bit. There's some stuff that's hard, and I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the show, but it was fun to like see, oh, my enthusiasm for Three Ninjas has never waned. Back in 1992, I mean, I saw this film in theaters. And I asked my mother, I'm like, we saw this in theaters, right? And she's like, yep, we did. I remember doing it. And I'm like, and my friend Cody came, and she's like, yep. And we had a whole conversation about Cody and going to see this movie. And
I knew in a
like,
Mega Mountain or Three Ninja?
Three Ninjas. High Noon at Mega Mountain was straight to video. The only two that were released in theaters, as far as I know, were Three Ninjas and Kickback, because I saw those two in theaters. Now, Kickback, we ended up getting there late. Like, I think we missed the first 5 minutes of that movie. So it's weird to me. It like lives in this weird space. It lives in the same exact space as D2 The Mighty Ducks, where like we wound up at the movie late, so I missed the opening to it. And then it weirdly kind of shut down the franchise for me until we moved from Leominster to Rhode Island. And then seeing Knuckle Up at the drugstore, the Brooks drugstore, that would eventually go on to be where Hollywood Video would be. When I saw Knuckle Up I picked up like, we're renting this. I gotta see this one. And that's the weird one about Native Americans and toxic waste. and then High Noon at Mega Mountain, like I had Fox Kids magazine, and there was no lie, a 6-page like coverage about High Noon at Mega Mountain. And, like, of course there is. Laurie Anderson's the villain. Jim Varney's there. Hulk Hogan's there. Oh, my God. I hope we get to watch that one again, because I have zero memories of it, other than the fact that it is Three Ninjas in name only. The only characters that... Alan McRae returns as their father, and I'm fairly certain Victor Wong is back as their grandfather.
I think Victor Wong's the only one to show up in all 4 films,
yes.
if I
Matt
remember
Slade
correctly.
is in 3 of them, because for some reason Rocky and Tum Tum were recast for Kickback, which makes it even weirder when they're back in Knuckle Up. This film franchise is insane, but everything that you've been saying about it, like being this weird sort of like representation of this style of movie, this exploitation film, is so true, because the only reason that Touchstone even bought this movie for distribution was it should make a couple of bucks, right? Distribution is going to be dirt fucking cheap. We dump it out in August and maybe we make a little bit of money on it. And then suddenly it's this huge successful franchise where they're like, we need to make a movie. There needs to be a sequel right now.
But if you like even remove it even from the outside influences of what those films were always like, even internally, like what the movie actually is these 3 trained brothers who don't necessarily see eye to eye but understand like a common goal, who have to defend their home from this group of larger ninja that have somehow found their way, the larger group, into some life of crime for some various reason, whether it's because they're evil or for necessity. It kind of varies depending on what, you know, where in the timeline you're talking about. But like all of the ninja they have to fight are all dressed the same. There's this understanding of who the good guys are versus the bad guys. There is an evil crime lord that is maybe like manipulating other people in some ways that maybe they don't understand. Not necessarily in this one, but in the other ones that you definitely get that. But like I love the Foot Clan ninjas that they get to beat up in this movie. The guys that have safety goggles on and like full on face masks that get to fight these brothers. It's a there's a phenomenal bit of just like martial arts going on in this movie. One of my favorite scenes is the attack on the dojo where they defend it all, and I love the stuff of them like fighting the ninja. The bit where Rocky is going underneath, going back and forth underneath the table is like again another core memory for me.
The part that I love about that is that he attacks the legs and the guy jumps up and hits his head. It's so
Yeah.
good. And then the other crazy thing between the edited and the unedited version is that there's cartoon sound effects on all those moments in the edited
That's
version.
where things start to get crazy. Is not only do they cut out a bunch of quote unquote violent stuff, right? They cut out like things like ninja stars and nunchucks and all of that.
Grandpa
If you want to get
straight
into the full
kills
edited
a
one,
guy in the unedited version.
there is this weird level in which cartoon sound effects are just added to just everything, and it is beyond cringeworthy. It is uncomfortable to watch.
Which is why I have to say, go watch it unedited if you have memories of it, because I don't think I would have approached it the way that I did, where like, oh my god, Colt learned a lesson right here, and that's Colt learning a lesson, and like there's him, he's capable of redemption within like 15 minutes of this movie starting. We see that he is capable of redemption, this like angry character. Like if if everything is being undercut by cartoon sound effects, you cannot find like the real beauty that is on display in this film. And I love this movie. Oh, so yeah, so they end up losing, right? Because like Rocky, you don't dunk for the 6 point. That's how you finish. And like that's because in my mind, I remembered that moment where Rocky dunked a basketball and wins the game. So it was real weird. But then the other thing is, because they lost the bikes, there is a scene at the very end where they beat up those bullies to get their bikes back.
Well, violence solves everything. I mean, this movie is not shy to talk about that. Like,
it is not a straight up we're going to attack these bullies and do it up. So here's the crazy thing, right? So here's the timeline of Three Ninjas, right? This is the part that's going to blow your mind. They're at their grandfather's house on the day of names, the day that they are given their ninja name of Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum. Rocky because he is strong and solid and cool like granite rock. Colt because he is fast and free and wild like the spirit of the young horse. And Tum Tum because his energy begins and ends with his tummy. After
he will not eat dog poop.
That's the important distinction. He'll eat anything but dog poop. And he's also a real big fan of Maniac Mechanic. The clothing in this movie, Sejan, that's how we used to dress. Like, that's not an over-exaggeration. It was all bright colors and, like, sweat pant material on every part of our bodies. It's crazy. So they're given their names, and then they're eating lunch with their grandfather when Snyder comes and pays a visit to them at their grandfather's house / dojo. Now, also, some sort of weird timeline, their father tries to arrest Hugo Snyder, and clearly they have some sort of history. I like to believe, personal headcanon, that Hugo Snyder dated Jessica, Mori Tanaka's daughter, before she settled down with Sam Douglas. That's personal headcanon. And I was doing the math. The reason why I know when all of the boys were born is because I wondered on some like distinct level if Rocky might be Snyder's child.
Oh God!
But it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out that way. So it works out that all of them can be the children of Sam Douglas. But like, there's a remake of Three Ninjas where I could inject a lot of drama, is all I'm saying.
So here's the thing. So Sam, older Sam Senior, is going after Snyder for drugs
arms
or whatever,
dealing.
the arms.
There's
and
a
stuff
big
like that,
fuck
right?
you missile that he gives to Agent Green.
Right. Meanwhile, we learn that Snyder has had this relationship with Grandpa for years, to the point where they were in a business of training people together. Like they opened a dojo together. Like they taught others the way of ninja together. So like there's this ongoing relationship. Is it ever addressed that like they have a familial relationship to this guy that Sam is hunting down?
Well, I mean, they don't really have a familial relationship. I mean, Sam.
Their grandfather family has a strong
Has-
relationship
okay.
with Snyder.
All right.
They have a family member who has a strong relationship.
They have a 2-hop connection to him. Like, Schneider's not related to them familially. That's what I thought I meant. Sorry. It is. I mean, Sam Douglas clearly knows that because he has the picture of Maury, their grandmother, and Snyder in the dossier.
I think this is another point where they kind of stumble into some old ninja trope as well. As there's a lot, especially in American ninja films, is that there's always a CIA guy or an FBI white guy that is always the bumbling white guy in the situation that either fucks stuff up to the point where they get killed by the villain, or they fuck stuff up and then they want to help the good guy out as much as they can because of how badly they fucked it up. And that is the role that Sam is in this movie.
Forrest
right?
Whitaker in Bloodsport jumps to mind.
But there is this idea being that, right, that they are the FBI. They are searching for this arms dealer. This arms dealer has had a relationship with Grandpa that was a long-standing one, as far as I know. Like, they seem to have a very large history together. Why is he okay with letting his 3 sons just completely unaccompanied just go with Grandpa out into the woods to learn?
He's not.
Like,
he's not. The fact of the matter is that he's not.
But why are there not? But he's FBI. Him not being okay with it means he's actually in a position of power to do something about that. Why is there not just a car watching the house or something? Right? Like, there's no effort made by Dad to actually keep an eye on Grandpa. When if it were me, Grandpa's the guy I would be watching like a hawk.
I mean, you say that, but then there is the fact that they follow Grandpa in order to find out where Snyder's headquarters is. So there's a really good, there's a really strong implication that they are aware of that connection and that they do use it when they are. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Douglas wasn't aware of Snyder visiting the dojo that day, but the boys are coming home that night. But it's also one of those things, like, they kind of explain that away with the fact that there are proximity sensors apparently all over Grandpa's little estate. So the FBI could probably be watching from behind a billboard disguised as a speed trap cop. But they couldn't get much closer.
This movie doesn't make any effort to explain any of that, though, right?
No, they
so
don't.
you're just given this information 40 minutes in that Grandpa has had this relationship with Snyder for a long time, and Snyder's the one that Dad's looking for, and you're putting it all together. And the first question I asked was just why the fuck were these kids at Grandpa's if this international arms dealer who's willing to murder people was on the loose and had a front? If anything, why wasn't Grandpa just at their house for protection?
Yeah.
And then, because Grandpa's here, he's going to teach the kids the stuff that Dad doesn't agree with, but Dad also doesn't want to let Grandpa out into the wild right now. There's so much more potential there.
The truest answer is in one of the grossest lines, what I would probably cite as my blue if this were an episode of the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, is the fact that Jessica Douglas, the mother of the 3 ninja, says that it's her Asian side, which is why she wants to make sure that her sons keep a strong familial relationship to their grandfather. Right. So it is 100% Sam Douglas being a stereotypical late 80s, early 90s husband and being like, well, the wife says it, so I have to do it. It's great. Here's the thing. Here's the bigger question, is the fact that Snyder is fully aware of who Sam Douglas is. Sam Douglas goes to that sting operation where Agent Martin Green pretends to be an Arab sheik. Yeah. That is a gross moment.
Yep.
If it were a couple of years later, it would have been played by Rob Schneider. You mark my fucking words right there.
And there would have been a lot more involved. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So it's this whole thing. He is the chauffeur, and him and Schneider look at each other, and it's just well, at that moment, you're made, right? And that's why I have this question of oh my God, is Sam Douglas part of it? Is he on the take? And he's trying to stop Schneider because Schneider could reveal and ruin his whole life? It's one of those situations where you would not be the chauffeur of this guy if the arms dealer that you're tracking knows who you are.
Right.
That is so absurd to me. To the fact that then when he's back in his office, his fucking beautiful Mr. X from Streets of Rage style, like, corporate office with Mr. Brown and Rushmore, which I don't know if Rushmore is ever called Rushmore, but that's the name of Professor Toru Tanaka's character is Rushmore, and I just fucking love that. Yeah. That is wonderful. Because he's a mountain of meat, that man. And I love
Professor Tanaka, yeah, man, like, he was one of the best back in the day. He wrestled around the same time as guys like, I mean, you know, like Iron Sheik and those guys wrestled, and like, yeah, man, he's so good in this movie, and he never has to say a word. I remember
he has the weirdest line in the movie though of, "Come on, my little pets," and it's just like, why the fuck did you say that?
I get why they don't let you talk more often, sir.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, but I remember there being a lot more of like the boys going up against him, and like he must be in another movie that I'm thinking of where like he gets like attacked and it's like nothing, like he basically like brushes it off like it's nothing. In this movie, he doesn't really get much time to actually fuck around.
Yeah, he has the whole scene where like they're all on him and then he pushes them off, and then Grandpa comes in with, and that's the other weird thing. Like there's the other like really weird thing is like that's the reunion scene in the edited movie with Grandpa is him 4 decks up in Schneider's like freighter yelling down, "Light up the eyes, boys!"
They show him climbing the ropes with the
the mooring. Oh my god,
just
it's so good.
Just on him. There's like a searchlight going around looking for intruders. I'm not even going to pretend that they're like looking specifically for him, but it's just, you know, it's security. It's looking for intruders. And then he hops onto the mooring to climb up it. And it's a cool bit and all watching him do that. But it's really hard to ignore the fact that there is a straight up bright as day backlight on him. And those guys that are walking around and those guys in the towers that have lights and shit, how are they not seeing this man lit up like the sun walking up the mooring of this ship?
So the big thing that I really love about this movie is clearly Schneider's ninjas are poorly trained. Because the whole reason that he goes back to Mori Tanaka is because he needs to have his men properly trained. And
they only succeed in this movie in the moments when they do, when they're using weapons like guns. Yeah. And that's not to say that, like, one of the big things about, like, ninja is that they're trained in all sorts of different weapons to use what's available to them in the moment and all that nonsense, right? But, like, I say nonsense, but I don't... it's weird to know where, like, the cultural aspects of this end and just movie bullshit kind of comes in, especially in a movie like Three Ninja that clearly doesn't give a shit about any type of cultural historical like accuracy to the word ninja. Otherwise they wouldn't have called it Three Ninjas. But there's like this whole idea being like they only ever have like giant ass like AKs in their hand.
Yeah, they have assault rifles, and like it's so nuts. Good when Rocky's like, if they have guns, they're no ninjas. And it's one of those really good, great moments. Like I talked about that scene where the guy uses the nunchucks and he hits his fellow ninja. Like that's the thing where like if he were properly trained, he would know not to use it. There's that other scene where they're like in the hallway of the ship and they try to draw their swords and it's too narrow. And the reason they can't do it is because like you need to turn your body first. Like there's actual training on how you would work in that stuff. And clearly Schneider's ninjas are not trained to the fact where I'm like, say what you will about the Foot Clan. The point of the Foot Clan is we will overwhelm you with numbers. But every member of the Foot Clan is properly trained in the art of ninjutsu.
Right.
Like there would be no moment where a Foot Clan member would use nunchucks and damage another member of his clan. Like that just would not happen. And if it were the Hand from Marvel, then like who even freaking knows, right? Because they're even better trained than the Foot in terms of fictional clans of ninjas, right?
Right.
And it's just like, so watching these guys and just all of the things that they do, like that's one of the reasons why the kids are able to overcome is because they are fighting people who are not properly trained and they have been properly trained. Think about that moment, the moment where I just write, the fuck is this guy? Because it's the guy in the full kabuki face paint with the sword. that we have never seen before. And it is played up like this is going to be the big fucking moment. This is where the three ninjas die. This is the moment where the three ninjas die, and Victor Wong has to avenge them because my boys are dead. And how it is played, it is beautifully set up earlier in the movie with the conversation between Colt and a random like schoolyard chum throwing a basketball about Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Lee. So clearly Colt has studied his Schwarzenegger because he goes total commando on that fucking guy, turning on the steam pipe. I love it. I absolutely love that moment.
It's perfect. Yeah.
And then he gets the sword, and then Colt is so trained with that blade that he can cut only the clothes of that guy, which is totally believable in terms of like, it's like, if you're well trained with the sword, you can cut so that it only cuts like certain layers. Like that's what they train you to do. It's beautiful. And that guy who plays the face painted ninja was Max Elliott Slade's blade trainer on the film. So like that's like this really cool moment just of like everything coming together. But it's one of those moments where I'm like, this is the fucking guy. This guy is so good that they haven't even showed him off before right now. And Colt just turns on a steam pump in his eyes and then like embarrasses him to death.
Yeah. The bits in this movie when they take on guys not using actual like ninja style weaponry or whatever, like it's just it's ridiculous. And it's the Home Alone of it all. That like the ways in which they really try and fold in like the Home Alone like kid comedy action stuff. It just makes this movie, it takes this movie to a whole other level that you're either on board with or you're not, right? Like,
yeah, and that whole sequence is really kind of crazy. First of all, Fester should be dead. Rocky would have choked him to death. The way what he does to that man with the tie noose would have killed him. Like
I thought he was going to kick him off the thing and like hang him. I was like, are we about to watch a man get just hung in the middle of their living room? Like what is about to happen?
Yeah.
So like when they reveal that he's just been laying there choking for a while, I had that moment where I was like, well, at least he's not dead. Well, actually at this point he probably still would be.
He would they do a really good job to show that he was able to get his fingers in there. So like maybe like direct contact was never made, but also like he would have passed out and he probably would have died. Like the way, like, first of all, Rocky is trained to defend himself when he is attacked. So that whole sequence is just.
Oh, I mean, there's all sorts of that weird shit in this movie with like the like slipping around and running into poles and banisters. But I mean, like even going back to the laxative stuff, like you drink an entire bottle of laxative in one go, half a bottle. They each share it, right? You drink a half a bottle of laxative, you need to go to the hospital. You are going to shit to the point where you are probably going to start losing organs.
Yeah, like it's played really good. I like that it doesn't happen immediately so that it can end up being the thing that saves them when they end up taking Emily hostage.
And then there's even this moment where the two guys find two separate bathrooms, right?
They go to the kids' ensuite bathroom. And then I don't know. I have no idea where Marcus goes.
So the ensuite bathroom is where Colt and Rocky go, right?
Yes.
So Colt and Rocky are upstairs. They get into that door. The guy comes at them off the toilet, pants still around his knees, comes off the toilet to like go after them, and they both go into stance to hit him. And there's a funny moment. I'm putting quotes around that. If you laugh or not, that's up to you. Where he's like, not the stomach, and so they say, they turn around and they elbow him in the face. He says thank you and then passes out. Cute moment. Very next scene. Literally cut to Tum Tum breaking into another bathroom in the house. The other guy on the toilet shitting his brains out gets up and is just like, oh, this kid is here. Realizes that Tum Tum has a boar's head in his hand. And what does he do? He full on rams right into that guy's stomach and then backs up and does it again.
I know. It's so great. And I'm just like, Tum Tum has no fucking mercy.
Tum Tum doesn't give a shit.
He's just like, Tum Tum gives a bit of a shit because he doesn't let Emily drink diarrhea cup.
Well, I can't.
First of all,
he gives a shit when the 13-year-old girl from next door is about to drink it. Yes, but I mean, like when it comes to these guys that attacked his house, he's just like,
oh, he's
"Whoa."
like, we're gonna. Yeah, I was gonna eat jelly beans and choke in my bed tonight. You ruined that for me. I was going to play Super Mario Brothers 3, get to the 5th world, and then decide, I can go back to the title screen. I don't need to finish the game tonight. It's so weird that he's in 5-1 of Super Mario Brothers. I think the reason why this film connects with so many people, it's certainly why it connects with me, is that the 3 ninja are hyper relatable. Like, there's some, you can see a bit of yourself in any of them, right? If you're the kid who's like overeats, right, and has the fast metabolism, you can see it in Tum Tum. Or like his happy-go-lucky nature. Tum Tum clearly being the Michelangelo, I think I've already said it, but like he very is like, he's the funny one. He's the one who's got the jokes and the jibes and stuff. Or maybe you see yourself as like the Rocky and like you're in charge of you're a bit older, so you're in charge. You can see it in everything. And then the fact that they play video games, like they're ninjas, but also they're just fucking kids too. They do a really good job walking that fine line.
How much did Disney pay you for this, Devin?
What? Am I not pay me anything? Is how I feel about the movie.
But I mean, you're describing exactly what this movie is setting out to do, is to take all of these like ninja style fun movie moments from those kinds of movies, take all of the fun Home Alone stuff and like slam them together into a movie that kids will just rent in perpetuity on Friday nights when they order a pizza with mom. Like that's what they put together here. Is they put to it's going back to some of the stuff that we were talking about like the shotgun effect of like, let's just take all this stuff that is currently working in cinema and just slam it together and see what works. If it does, then we'll make 4 more movies about it. If it doesn't, we'll call this a loss, move on. We'll sell it off to Disney to show on Sunday nights and it'll be fine. Like that is the way that like movie making was approached for probably a decade's worth of film, like the end of the 80s into the late in the 90s. It isn't until you get to the end of the 90s when you start to see people taking these kinds of films and like taking any kind of risks with them. And then, you get into the 2000s and the world just gets flipped on its head,
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that of course, it's the whole 30-year cycle, right? Where anything 30 years old is new again. Anything 20 years old is retro, and everything 10 years old is like blasé, and we don't want to try to do that again. So like movie making now, especially streaming era, is all about that 90s style movie making. And like making stuff, and like one of the fucking streaming platforms will pay us for this.
Or if you're one of the streaming platforms, seeing that Hulu has a, I don't know, like a badass action movie that features a female lead, just to say, and so then Netflix, HBO streaming, and Disney are all going to put out 3 or 4 of those over the next 2 years. And if any of them stick, they'll make a franchise out of them. But if they don't, that's okay, because they've got 5 other movies loaded to try and see what they can do with. Right,
Gunpowder
like
Milkshake,
that attitude to filmmaking.
Jolt, and the one that came out on HBO Max that I can't remember the name of, but you're not wrong. Like that's 100% a thing that they did, and it's citation wise, and it's crazy. It's this crazy thing, but then it doesn't have the same heart. Like the difference between what we're seeing now and what we were seeing then, you can tell that the people who are making this movie care about what they're doing on some level. It's not just about churning out commercial.
I would argue in this individual film,
yes,
you can definitely see that. But there were plenty of movies around this time that didn't, and that's the same thing now.
Yeah.
Is that there are 1 or 2 of those movies that you watch and you go, yeah, this is enjoyable. Clearly, I mean, like, look at the ways in which I've talked about the Lindsay Lohan Christmas Netflix movie this year, Falling for Christmas. It's an enjoyable film to watch because you can tell that everybody had fun making it, and that like they knew what they were making, but that didn't stop them from still putting in 100% while they were making it, and they had fun with it, and so it's a great watch in the end. That's not true of all of the Hallmark style Disney films that come out, or Christmas films that come out this time of year, right? Like there's tons of them that get popped out that feel like that person showed up on Wednesday, was handed a script, and we're done filming by Friday. They don't even know if they cared about the project because they weren't around long enough.
Or
right?
referencing other movies that have come out recently, Edie Falco in Avatar: Way of Water.
Who openly admitted she thought it had already come out and just flopped. That's why she hadn't heard about it.
Good times, great oldies, references.
Yeah, well, you know what? We can pull a couple of punches at Avatar: Way of Water because just from what we could see in this very moment of time, it's probably going to be the next big movie. So, so,
Yeah,
so
it's
we can
fun.
survive a couple of
I
jabs.
think it's fun. It's just a fun thing, but it is, yeah. And I think that is the difference then, is that this film, there clearly is some love on display. And then when you read things like Max Elliott Slade and Michael Triner, who were Colt and Rocky respectively, really felt like brothers on set. Like they brought that into it, and you can tell that the way that they spar and like bicker with each other feels realistic to how brothers who are that close in age would talk to each other, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Think
and
about
the other
you
thing
and
is
Zach,
like they
and
were.
like
Yeah, and you know, even divorced from the stuff we see on screen. I mean, these two guys that are around the same age, being young male actors in Hollywood in the early '90s, it was probably not a safe environment for them. And you know, sticking together kind of probably became a very important point for all three of them. But I mean, like when we talk about this movie having that level to it of people that really do, you know, care about being there and all that. I mean, as we mentioned, like you have guys that play even the smallest roles in this movie, like Fester, Patrick Laborito. Is that how you say his name? How do you say his name?
Libertorno.
Yeah, but Torno. How? There's no N after the end. It's all right.
It's French.
So it's LabyauX. There's no N anywhere in it. So even
then
in French,
Libertoro.
you wouldn't get a.
Sorry, I thought the R was an N. Libertoro.
But you get but you end up with like these guys that like you have him playing that role. I mean, even Victor Wong playing Grandpa. We joked about the professor, but like Professor Toro Tanaka as like your silent henchman character. You have these weird really good actors that have maybe bigger careers after this movie that are showing up in this, or guys like Victor Wong that had huge careers before it showing up in this. So there's people that clearly care about movie making involved, right? Like it's wild to see some of the casting on this film in that specific regard. Like people that care about movies and care about making movies, no matter whether or not they're Oscar winning movies or anything like that. Like clearly, I don't think anyone working on this thought that's what they were aiming for.
It
but
got
Jon
nominated for
Turteltaub's no
best ensemble. That's a crazy
Oscars?
thing.
Was that an
Not an
Oscar?
Oscar. It's like a young actor award that they got nominated for.
Yeah.
Chad Power, Michael Triner, and Max Elliott Slade got nominated for best ensemble. And I just think it's cool. Like it's cool when you go on IMDb and you see one nomination. I'm like, really? And it's not like a raspberry. Like they realized that these three kids came together and made something special. And maybe we
I mean,
should
like
award them for
you
that.
see a lot in this movie in terms of people that were happy to be there while this movie was being made, and B, just happy to be working in the movie industry, which is not the case with a lot of these kinds of cheaper movies that were thrown together in the 90s. Like you get the impression in a lot of these films that people were just not sure which one they were working on.
You know, everybody clocks in and is on board for what is happening in this film, and it's excellent. I love this movie. And one of the things that I really like about this film, like going through everything, is everybody seems to be celebrating it this year. Like, I knew last year when it was going to be Ninj-ativity again that this was going to be the movie. And the only reason that I thought that was because it's 30 years old, right? And I have a weird affinity for it. But I have been very excited to see that same affinity. I'm sending you everything I see on Twitter because I know you're not there anymore. But someone sharing the masks with If You Know, You Know, or like that beautiful watercolor drawing of the three of them that I sent. Like, It's been a real fun time to like dive back in and rejoin the Three Ninjas as a 36-year-old man, as like this thing that like so defines like everything about me as a young man is Three Ninjas. We go like, this was a movie that I saw back when we lived in the trailer park in Leominster, Massachusetts. I saw the sequel when we were living out in Templeton, and then I saw the third movie as soon as we had moved to Rhode Island. So this is a series that like kind of grew with me. And then by that time in 95, when I saw Knuckle Up, I was taking martial arts lessons and learning discipline because I was an angry young kid. And I'm still kind of an angry older man, right? Like, it's one of those things where, like, there's a reason why Raphael and Colt are the people I look to in these two films, because I saw a lot of myself in those characters as a young child. But, like, that's the other thing, is that this movie was directly responsible for a 10% leap in children learning martial arts in the United States of America.
Man.
That's just a fact. That's a proven fact.
That's awesome. It's stuff like that that really kind of like, it shows you how impactful even some of the like silliest movies really could be. Because like 30 years out, I mean, as much love as everyone has for this movie, I don't think anybody's holding it up as like a pinnacle of like filmmaking in any meaningful...
It's not The Godfather, and we'll talk about that later this week.
Right, but that idea being like, but we're still, and in a lot of ways, this kind of feeds some of the stuff that like, we jokingly talked about Avatar, but I've mentioned on the show about some of the ways people are reacting to Way of Water right now that I struggling doesn't seem like the right word, but the ways in which people react to that movie are really hitting me, and I'm really thinking about the world, just because there's so much of this attitude of people just being like, yeah, it's not, it's not phenomenally made in terms of acting or in terms of story, but those visuals, and it's just a good time, and like, can't you just enjoy a movie? And I'm just like, I'm tentatively kind of happy about the ways people are enjoying that film, because it's a lot like the ways that we're talking about Three Ninja. Is like, yeah, like this is a movie that just is creating core memories for us, is developing a sense of cinema that we will then carry forward and love and hold with us, and hold other movies up against, and consider other movies against, and all that. And like, that's awesome, because like Three Ninja is a movie that really kind of did that for me in a way that I wasn't even ready to like for it to do that. I was too young to really understand what it was doing, watching this movie as much as I was and all that. But like, again, it's the same ways that people are now talking about Avatar and being like, yeah, it's not the greatest film ever made, but this is definitely a movie that's going to impact the way I watch movies going forward. Is like, all right, like, okay, yeah, good for you.
Yeah, and you can't deny somebody one of those formulative moments, right? Maybe it's three brothers being ninja because their grandfather taught them that. Maybe it is 10-foot tall alien species teaching you why their world is special. Like, it is the true magic of cinema, right? I haven't seen the Fablesmans yet. The Fablesmans, right? Oh, I hate myself for all of that. That's watching Letterkenny to prepare for the new season, which is also available today if you're a Hulu subscriber. I swear I'm not shilling for it. I'm just excited about season 11s of Letterkenny's. Pluralizing stuff is just going to happen. But I haven't seen the Fablemans yet. But the magic of cinema, for me, in 2022 is alive and well when I watch something like Three Ninjas, and a film that was so impactful and so everywhere while still remaining so innocuous, to the fact that like it was just always there, and I kind of took it for granted. But then watching it this week, right, in preparation for this episode, and learning excuse me, all of the insane details.
Doing okay over there?
Yeah, I really should take a sip of water. I'm just so excited, right? That's the way of water for me, is the fact that I should do it.
Big old, what were those old Staples buttons that you could get?
That was easy.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get you one of those, but it's going to be a cough button.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I was just so excited about it. And like, this film found new life for me in 2022, 30 years later, learning about the difference between the edited version that I had seen my entire life and this unedited version. And even then, there's a third, truly unedited version that starts with an animated sequence that we haven't even talked about at this point, that by all accounts only existed in the German release of this film.
Yeah, I don't know like anything about that other than hearing like rumors that existed.
I did send to our Discord the cut of it. So if you do want to watch it, it's out there on YouTube. You need to type in Three Ninja Kids. And you'll be able to see it. And the really weird thing about it is what that animated sequence is the opening credits. Because one of the weird things about this movie is it doesn't tell you any of the people who are in this movie before it starts. And the reason why is there is a solid, like, 2-minute animated sequence that shows you all of the characters and who plays them and little moments that are related to the character. The weirdest thing about it is Emily, the, like, drawing of Emily, who at the most is 12 years old in this movie, possibly 13 if she's like a year older crush for Rocky, even though that kid's already got a tin can phone in her bedroom. So, like, the foundation has been laid, my friend, right? Get it? Because his name's Rocky. Cool, like granite rock. It is so, like, weirdly over-sexualized, the animated drawing of Emily.
Oh,
like,
God.
And it's just like, well, she does not have breasts in this movie. And that is like a full-on... What it reminded me of, that animation, is the ballerina from that episode of Dexter's Laboratory. Like, it's that level of detail that, like, doesn't really make any sense in terms of everything that's going on. It's definitely worth watching, but that one has never seen a U.S. release. But it's out there and it does exist. Like, undeniably, it's a thing that is out there and exists. And the other thing I'd like to say is, you know, I tell people what we're recording. Everyone that I have mentioned Three Ninjas to, well, those who didn't immediately turn to dust, realizing that it's been 30 years since they first saw this movie, has had fond memories to share about the film. So that's also been really great, especially, like, it's part of Ninj-ativity. It is part of the Christmas season for us. So seeing that warmth and, like, goodwill towards man that has been inspired by Three Ninjas has been really excellent. But I do... is there anything else you'd like to say? Because there's one other thing I'd like to explore, and it's related to the director, Jon Turteltaub.
No, I mean, like, we've talked about a lot about this movie, more than this movie necessarily has going on in it. So if you watch it and you realize there's a lot less in here than I thought, don't be surprised.
Yeah, no, this is from me. I watched this movie 4 times this week, minimum. I might have done more, because after watching the Amazon, the version that's up on Amazon twice, and then finding out that there's an edited version, I did watch that hour 24 one that's on YouTube so that I could pick apart and analyze the differences. And then today I went back to the Amazon one because I can't believe it's out there. It is $18 to buy it. Don't spend $18. Rent it for $4.27. That, I just have to say that. Don't do it. Oh, it's that. Here's the thing that I noticed, right? So Jon Turteltaub is the director of this. The citation that I'm going to give as his most popular film, at least for me right now, and the reason why seeing his name at the start and end of Three Ninjas affected me, is National Treasure, and its follow-up, National Treasure, The Book of Secrets. Would you agree, Sejan?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, not to discount all of the other films that he has done, right? Like Cool Runnings and The Kid with Bruce Willis and Spencer Breslin. Like, he's done a lot of movies, but with the Edge of History, is that the name of the Disney Plus series?
Edge of History? It might be.
I think it's National Treasure, Edge of History.
Edge of History, yeah. Executive producer on Edge of History, yep.
Yeah. So that, with that series coming out, I did a rewatch and revisit of the 2 National Treasure movies, and I'm noticing a lot of, like, trademarks of the director, who is Jon Turteltaub, and I think I may have unlocked one that might not be on IMDb. And I'm purely...
Lemon juice. He puts it on everything.
Oh, you're just gonna put some fire on it. No.
Please don't.
This is a very old document. It is no admittance signs. Because, like, when they go into the steeple where the bell of... God, I can't remember the name. Bass and Bend?
Oh, right. You're talking about in the National Treasure.
In National Treasure, right? They go up there, they jump over a sign blocking that stairway that says, no admittance, employees only. And that hit me because I use the word admittance a lot in my everyday job. So like seeing it right now, I'm like, oh, it is a proper word, right? Because I just saw it. I'm using it properly. It just feels weird a little bit in how I use it. But then when Fester, Hammer, and Marcus knock on the boys' bedroom door, the sign on that door is no admittance, employees only. So now I'm going to probably go through all of the Jon Turteltaub movies and see if all of his movies feature a no admittance sign. Because that's the type of crazy person that I am, CJ.
See, I think it's more of like a causality versus like what's the other one? What's the opposite of that?
Coincidence versus causality.
Yeah. I think it's a coincidence thing because I think it's more that he just really likes dealing with people that we know as the audience are always in the right, but sometimes have to go, around the law to do it, right? Which is something that we see in both of these movies and in the National Treasure movies. I think that he thinks so. I think it's just to him, it just looks cool when somebody's disobeying that sign.
Well, I will certainly check, because if there's a third one, then it's a trend. Right now, I only have these two movies to point to.
I do agree it's probably a trend in his movies. I will give you that.
Okay. But I'm excited to do it. So I guess that's going to be one of my projects for 2023, is looking for no
New Year's
admittance
resolution.
I mean, it's more New Year's task. It's like the New Year's scavenger hunt, right?
The Turteltaub resolution.
The Turteltaub resolution. It sounds like a National Treasure movie. Oh, man. And remember, National Treasure 5, Goat Town, it's coming eventually, right? Now that we've got the TV show and a National Treasure 3 is apparently in production, who knows? I can't believe
Which clearly has to marry the TV show and the Nick Cage
series, right?
Right? Like, yeah.
You know what is the craziest thing to me? Nicolas Cage and Jon Turteltaub are high school classmates.
I mean, that explains a lot.
And like going one step further and tying it into our own personal history, Jon Turteltaub beat out Nicolas Cage for a role in Thornton Wilder's Our Town.
All right. What role? I need to know.
I don't know. That the evidence is the only trivia that I could find about it.
Police officer.
The role that I played, the role of me being in it. I would have to imagine the stage manager, right? Either the stage manager or George. Like, I need to deep dive into that, right? So there's another thing for the Turteltaub resolutions, is looking into what role he beat Nicolas Cage for. But like, if it's the stage manager, well, it makes a lot of sense that Jon Turteltaub would then go on to be a director. Right? In some way, shape, or form? The last thing that I have to say, and that is because I did watch the unedited version, Grandpa straight kills a guy in the unedited version. I need to mention it again. Because they have
I did not see this, so you're going to have to take the reins on it.
So they have a reunion scene after the scene where Colt like strips the guy's suit to ribbons. They have a scene where they're in the hallways of the ship, and Grandpa comes down the stairs and they come upon him and they're like, "Oh, Grandpa." And they're still going through that crisis of consciousness where they're not certain if their grandfather is good or bad. They're like, they wonder, and all of the evidence is pointing to the fact that their grandfather may be in league with Snyder. So, like, they see their grandfather, and they're like, "Grandpa, it's us." And he pulls out a kunai from his outfit, and there's this moment where they're like, "Holy fuck, is Grandpa going to kill us right now? Like, we've seen too much?" And then he throws the kunai, and it lands in the heart of one of Snyder's ninjas, who is coming up behind the three ninjas to attack them.
Oh, he murders a dude.
Oh, it lands. It hits the heart. It hits the heart, and it goes deep. And I'm just like, Grandpa just murdered that guy.
Wow.
So like, it also makes sense why maybe that was cut out of the movie. But also, that's like a really gruesome moment. The scene where Snyder is shot by a sniper, there is no gunshot wound.
No, not at all. Nothing. Like, you hear a gunshot, and then he like touches his shoulder to see if he got shot, and then we're just like cut to the FBI being there. It's like, oh, okay.
Like he hits his shoulder, and I'm just like, oh my god, did someone use like a shuriken on him? Like, what just happened? Because he goes down like as if he is losing copious amounts of blood from a high caliber long range rifle bullet. But that doesn't happen. But like that, thank God that doesn't happen, because then that whole thing would have had to been cut. Just like the scene where Grandpa straight murders a dude. Now it's to defend his grandchildren, but Egg Shen, he's got a history there. There's some big trouble in little Three Ninjas. Oh, no, I have one other thing to say, too. I'm sorry. I got to get them all out, right? And if you will have the floor after me, I promise. Why the fuck do they share a bedroom? The government is paying for that beautiful house at the end of a cul-de-sac in suburbia, and we see 2 additional rooms that they could spread out into. Their room is fucking cool, but
well, one of those rooms is clearly saved for Sam's My Morning Jacket room.
Right. That is. I'm like, their father has a study? You have 3 kids. You let them have their own rooms. And I am pretty convinced that the white room that is being worked on so that, like, I don't think Jessica and Sam are stupid, and they do realize that Rocky will be 13 very soon and probably want a space of his own. So I think that's the room that Mom is redoing. But like,
sure, they strike me as 2 parents that don't think about their kids too much.
I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, he's a negligent father. That's the main story of it, is that he's so obsessed with catching Schneider. He's not there as a father.
He's not there for the kids. Yeah, I know.
He dead names his kids. And it's just like, oh, no, their names are Rocky, Colt, and Tum Tum now. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, even when Jessica accidentally calls Tum Tum Michael, she is immediately like, I'm sorry, Tum Tum? Like, it's really, there's a lot on display in this movie. The babysitter is Jon Turteltaub's aunt. That's just a shout out. Fritzy Burr is Jon Turteltaub's aunt.
Who I, like, forgot about until she showed up in the closet with the pizza all over her.
Like, that's the other thing. Like, they're not home alone. They are supervised by a babysitter. She's just terrible. Also, the babysitter gets there at, like, 9 p.m. Like, it is very late in the day. Like, and then the crazy thing, right? In the one where, like, the next day they fight the bullies because the bullies, like, are hassling them, and Rocky turns the other cheek twice while the bully, like, pushes him, and then he's like, Emily, and Emily's like, show off, and Rocky just flips him on his ass, and then they get their bikes back, and then there's your happy ending.
Nice.
Like, it's wonderful. But then I'm thinking, I'm just like, this is the day after they just went through all of that shit on Snyder's boat. These poor bastards. They've just had the hardest 2 days of their life. Like, they get home on Sunday, right? Have to go to school that Monday. That Monday is where the basketball game happens, and they are attacked by the 3 surf punks. Because the surf punks initially try to take them the night that they return home. Like, it is so fast clip, this movie. It is 48 hours with the additional scene, 60 hours in total that we see in these young boys' lives. They gotta be tired. They're 8, 11, and 12, Sejan.
Well, 8, it's the unity of time and place, Devin. This was going to be shown by the French in the 1700s.
The 3 unities on display in the 3 Ninjas. 4 strands of rope.
As reception. Okay, yeah, also that line is fucking nonsense.
Well, it's true, though.
What? 4 strands of rope is an unbreakable rope? Somebody should tell the government.
Well, there's only 3 strands. No, but it's like, if it's a single strand of thread, you can break that.
It's the 3 of them and Grandpa. That's 4 strands.
I know where the 4 strands come from, but then you like do it. It's like a twist. It's like a twizzless pulling peel.
No, I mean the line that Grandpa has about how like a strand of rope on its own is breakable, but 4 strands can never be broken is essentially like, I'm paraphrasing.
I think that's exactly the line.
But well, it's more to the point. It's these fucking nonsense.
It's called a metaphor, Sejan. He doesn't literally mean
it's a bad metaphor.
I mean, it's a ridiculous metaphor, is what it is, and all I think of is just
chain made of sugar can be not broken, except
if you lick it a couple of times.
Yeah.
We're getting through
just
it,
a metaphor.
Grandpa.
Just leave it alone, all right?
It's just a metaphor. What? Don't lick it. You said it's made of sugar.
Tum-tum?
Is it literally made of sugar? Then if I lick it, my saliva will cut through it. 1, a 2, a 3. That's right. Bringing back the Tootsie Roll Owl character.
In a while.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I don't know if there's anything. I could literally talk about this movie for another 2 hours.
We have to end this so that we can bring 2022 to a close.
That's very true. This is the last official episode of 2022. Anything Three Ninjas that you want to add before we go into the wrap up, Siege?
No. I'll see y'all next year, though.
Yeah. There is one more very special episode this year, which is The Godfather. You'll be able to listen to that on Thursday. It's probably going to be a 3-hour-long episode because we try to make our episodes the length of the movie that we covered.
We don't. Devin does.
Because I try to make the episodes the length of the movie that we covered. So just gear up for that. I'm excited to look at it with the 50 years of The Godfather, and there's some good stories from Siege and I and the people around us related to that film, so it should be fun. Thank you so much for joining us for Ninj-ativity 3, Three Ninjas. See if you can guess on Twitter at the Say Report what we're going to cover for Ninj-ativity 4. Because I know of 2 movies, and I don't know what we're going to cover yet, Siegen. Even though I'm pretty sure there has to be a discussion, right? There'll be a production meeting and we'll talk about it. But yeah, this is the end of 2022. There's been some crazy shit going on. But what I do hope for everybody who's listening and everybody that's out there in Radio Land, that you had a very happy holiday, that you got to see the people that you wanted to see, avoided the people you didn't want to see, and were able to get that injection of Christmas spirit as we go into, this weird holiday taint before New Year's. But thank you so much. 2022 has been great for the Say Report. I've had so much fun this year, and a big thank you to you, Siegen, for that as well. So thanks.
Well, happy holidays, and thank you to you too, Devin. This has been the 2022 has been a weird one, folks, but not as weird as some of the past, and probably not as weird as things are going to get in the future. But I'm happy we survived it.
The worst fucking thing is that these episodes, more so than any other episodes, have aged so poorly. Remember 2020 super podcasting? Oh, we were so excited for what 2020 might held. And then in 2020 hindsight, well, that's a phrase that's now become problematic. All right. So yeah, if you have anything to get in touch with Siege, and the best place to send a message to him is directly on our Twitter at the Say Report.
Or if you want to hit up Devin directly, then Devin's got his own little Twitter over there at Devin D. Decker.
And I will talk to you about Three Ninjas for copious amounts of hours. I love Three Ninjas. But until then, let's send it over to our own little Tum Tum. Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.